Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me, over me. And before we be slaves, we'll be buried in our grave and go home to be with our Lord and be free. Welcome to Greenversations Encore, celebrating Juneteenth.
Child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandmother's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of light, and builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith, makers of peace, wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We're mothers of courage and fathers of time. We're daughters of dust and sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We're lovers of light and builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We're makers of peace and wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
On June 19th to commemorate the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. The holiday was first celebrated in Texas, where on that date, in 1865, in the aftermath of the Civil War, slaves were declared free under the terms of the 1862 Emancipation Proclamation. Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day. It is observed in all states in the U.S. except 3, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Hawaii. Juneteenth, emancipation, road to freedom. Next stop, liberation. Welcome. We have a powerhouse for you tonight. You are not going to leave here without feeling inspired, informed, educated, and ready to rock and roll for the liberation movement. On our panel tonight, we have coming up our Chief Executive Officer of the Partnership for Southern Equity. He is our Chief Funketeer, the Pharaoh, who leads us right into battle. And then following him, we'll have 2 young people out of Brunswick, Georgia, organizers, a mother and daughter team, Dana Beckman and Sister Johneya. I'm telling you, powerhouse, powerhouse. And then our own Alicia Scott, did I say our own Alicia Scott, will be following the dynamic duo. And then to take us home, we have the powerful Representative Harold Mitchell out of Spartanburg, South Carolina, founder and executive director of Regenesis, the only man on the planet who's taken a $20,000 grant from EPA and turned it into a multi-million-dollar project. Brother Nathaniel, see, I got some folks for you, and you're going to set the stage. You are going to set the framework. Bring it home to us, lay it down. We ready for you. The greatest funketeer that I know. And when we say make my funk the P-Funk, we talking about the people funk. This is the leader of the people's funk, stepping up to the plate, calling for things to be anchored in equity and justice, but knowing that our final destination is liberation. None other than the fantastic, phenomenal Brother Nathaniel Smith. Come on with it, brother.
Well, Dr. McClain, I'm just so honored. Anytime I have an opportunity to be with you, the residue of your greatness and love for our people has definitely influenced me. And we are definitely honored to have you as a part of PSE's village, as well as the other panelists that are on the call. We are on the Greenversations conversation, SteamYard, and forgive me, there's so many, from Zoom to SteamYard to, to everything else. So please forgive me for that. But I'm just so honored to be on the panel with everyone else as well, who are just doing their part. My family in Brunswick, and just so honored to have a chance to be with you all, as well as South Carolina, which is another critical piece to what I call the third reconstruction of our nation through the South again. The first reconstruction, the closest that we ever got to truly realizing what America could be for all people, occurred in the South. And I believe that third reconstruction that we will be experiencing in our nation will have to begin here, not because I said so, but because God said so. And it's obvious that God's will is continuing to manifest itself through the work of people like Reverend Mitchell and also Dana and Juneyah. So, I don't want to tear it too far, but, when Dr. McClain talks about the P-Funk, when she talks about people being the gateway towards liberation, that is something that is not just said again. This is something that is real, because we must know and understand that regardless of how many degrees we may have, regardless of how many schools we have attended or how many research documents we develop, the people that are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And we have to always understand that when we're doing work to liberate our people. I also want to make sure that we lift up another P, Dr. McClain, and that is power. That through the people and through their vision and their wisdom, that we will be able to bring about the type of power, not just civic power, but soul power that we will need in order to undo the centuries of white supremacy that we have experienced as Black people and historically disinvested communities of color. The history of Juneteenth is a history of not just freedom, but also a history of resilience. It's a history of strength. It is a history of making a way out of no way. It is a history of us fighting against the unjust laws of man by way of the spiritual power that we have as a people. The ability to love our enemy towards liberation is something that we have been given as Black people and historically disinvested communities of color. And we must take that history, that resilience, that belief that we have been called to not only redeem our souls, but like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference through the leadership of Martin Luther King said, redeem the soul of America is the work. The work of liberation is the work of redemption. It is not just the work of policy change. It is not just the work of inputs and outputs or measuring success. It's about not only changing systems, transforming systems, but it's also about transforming people. And any agenda, any liberatory agenda that just focuses on transforming laws without also focusing on transforming people is not liberation. And so while we are the organization that calls ourselves the Partnership for Southern Equity, we know that equity is not the end, but a pathway to liberation. And through the work of people, and people more specifically, not just the individuals that have the opportunity to do panel discussions like this, but the unnamed heroes, the people who work every day in spite of the odds, who on many occasions have to choose between supporting their staffs and the people that are supporting them or paying the light bill, are the people who must be honored and elevated and supported on our sojourn towards justice. It is our responsibility to make sure that we are the people that we've been waiting for. And with that comes three key things that I believe are very important to ensure that we continue down this path towards liberation. One, we have to begin to focus on resistance. We have to resist the evils of our society and understand that we are not of this society. We are working within it to do what we can to fight. So we must resist the temptation of money. We must risk and fight against the temptation of patriarchy. We must fight against the temptation of supremacy, of white supremacy, and all the other supremacies that work so hard to separate us from each other. We must resist that. Then after we resist, we must reform. We must work to reform the policies, not just structural, but also the institutional policies that minimize our ability to create a society where all people can benefit and prosper for what the Creator has given us, not only to receive, but also to have stewardship over. So we must work to reform. Then we have to move towards reconciliation. We must work hard to ensure we create spaces where the trauma and pain that we've experienced as Black people in the South and others must be called out and lifted up. And the oppressors have to be willing and be pushed to acknowledge those evils, right? And begin the process of healing, which is a critical component of it. Advocacy work without that critical component, the component of reconciliation, again, minimizes our ability for true liberation, because we may have all of the resources we want, but if we're not healed as human beings, as children of God, then we will never be able to fully realize who we truly are. And if we're not careful, and many of the people who are listening to this call understand and know this, that we have Black oppressors the same way that we have white oppressors. And so the work around reconciliation is not just about undoing white supremacy outside of our bodies, within our bodies as well. And last, but certainly not least, we have to work towards restitution. We have to work to ensure that the resources that we have access to, the resources that we have built with our slave labor, the resources that have been accumulated by way of our exploitation, will finally be developed and shaped in a way that will be in a position to truly heal and support a new way forward for generations to come. I hope that those R's will assist you in thinking about the work that is required. And I, again, am just so honored to have an opportunity to be a part of this journey, of this struggle, this beautiful struggle with you all.
My leader, how would you define liberation?
So for me, liberation, again, is about the physical and spiritual transformation of a people in a way that begins to translate itself in a positive way in the world around us. You know, I think that it is critical and important that if we are talking about a liberatory agenda, that we must start with ourselves first. We must begin to fix the internal trauma and damages that this society has manifested upon us, and begin the process of being a true reflection of the change that we want to see in community. Work without integrity is not liberatory work. Work with extreme extraction or a culture of extraction that harms communities more than it heals communities is not liberatory work. So, it takes both the physical and the spiritual is to ensure that we will achieve our goals as a community.
Ashe. Oh, now we have two on the ground, folks. Them name folk that you were talking about, my leader, the Funketeer, Sister Dana and Sister Juneteenth. And I want to take my hat off to Sister Juneteenth, who has been with the Black Leadership Development Institute for probably about 25 years or so.
About 25 years.
Grew up in the Institute, and as a result has gone on to win many accolades for her work, her playwriting, her research, her activism on the ground. So Sister Dana and Sister Juneteenth, bring the word.
Well, we bring you greetings from Southeast Georgia, Brunswick, of the Golden Isles. And Juneteenth here, like Dr. McClain has said, and I have truly been working a long time in this community to fight for freedom for our people. And one of the things that I like to start off with by reading a quote from Brother James Baldwin. And he said, freedom is not something that anybody can be given. Freedom is something people take, and people are as free as they want to be. Now, I had to play that around over and over in my head. But the thing about James Baldwin and his solid words is that how I relate it to our people right now as we move toward Juneteenth, and in the work that I've been working in the field for so many years. And I see over and over again that our people I ask the question, do they really truly want to be free? Because I ask that because it's like we sit and we wait for people to give us freedom of learning how to dwell like in a common, peaceful community, freedom to learn how to eat right, freedom to learn how to coexist together. It's like we sit and wait for others to decide on that for us. But I think if we truly, truly want that, we will band together and understand that it can't be given to us. We have to take that. And what I mean by taking that is truly understanding who we are as God's people. If you understand who you are when it comes to the relationship to the Most High, we can't fall. We can't fall. I think we only fall because we don't know and we don't realize who we are. And when we do that, we continue to be subjects of whatever they put before us. Whatever they set before us, we fall for it. For example, if there's a carrot that is dangling before our eyes, we'll go in that direction instead of staying sound and firm together to work through all these isms that are placed before us. You know, we talk about, someone asked me, what is the role of the Black woman? I think Dr. McClain was talking about that before. What is the role of the Black woman in our fight for freedom? And I always say that a long time ago, one of my instructors told Johneya and the girls in a sister circle, and I never forgot that at the Black Youth Institute, that you can tell the condition of a community from the condition of the women in the community. And I think that as women, we have to be certain and be sure that we teach the children. It is our job to teach the children at home who they are, what you came in this world to be, who you belong to, how we construct a whole, healthy, safe sustainable community. And we need to learn to work towards that, but we always seeking out other people for the answers for ourselves. We will never get that true freedom, I don't think, until we start on those paths as teaching the young, taking care of our community, and whether that entails, right, Johneya, being involved from the youth, from every part of systemic racism that's in every area. You have to be involved in the school system. You have to be involved in your local government. You have to be involved with the youth. You have to stand up to make change on environmental injustices. We've been fighting forever with this in my community, but we as women, we understand our role. And I think when we celebrate Juneteenth, we have to remind young people. And I'm so excited about it because we're working with a good bunch of youth that will be involved with Juneteenth with us this year. Some are different, and some of them are new, and some of them are old that have been with us for years. And also, I want to talk about our history in the movement of freedom in this town. I mean, I can go back 25 years of working in environmental injustices in this community, bringing awareness of all these. We have the most Superfund sites on this side of Georgia in Glenn County. We have more than 26 Superfund sites. It could be more. And so working with trying to bring awareness for change, for people to understand what is environmental injustices. I was just speaking to a group of kids at Tuskegee University in a biodiversity class, and talking to them about the importance of getting their education to go back to their hometowns to teach environmental injustices. But our history in this movement of freedom goes a long way back to the Black Youth Institute, like Dr. McClain has said, bringing my child up in that movement. So that's embodied in her soul to carry on to other youth and exposing other youth in this community. Children still to this day, young people still talk about their experiences in there. And our involvement right now recently with the Ahmaud Arbery movement, and I'm working so closely with his aunts right now to put together a foundation for the aunties, because they don't have a foundation for the aunts, for their family. So the the Arbery Family Foundation is coming underway. So I've been working closely with them as well in this movement. So Johneya, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask you to invite Sister Johneya into the conversation.
Okay, Johneya. So why do you fight for freedom, Johneya? That's a good question for her.
Well, I fight for freedom because it's needed within our community. My ancestors fought for freedom. Freedom has yet to be attained within my community. So we must continue to fight. I don't think the Creator put us here to stay stagnated within ourselves. We're put here to fight for change and fight for justice. So that's what we have to do. Continue to fight.
Would you say that systemic racism is bigger and badder than ever before, or things that got better in our city, in our state, in our country?
I wouldn't say things have gotten better. I think that we have allowed ourselves to become distracted or just sway from attaining our vigilance.
Distractions from what, Johneya?
Distractions from media.
From media.
And outside society factors. So I So it's a lot of things that are pulling our attention. And so we get distorted in thinking that things have changed or things no longer exist. When in actuality, they still do. And it's getting worse by the minute. So we must attain our vigilance within society. That's how I feel.
Yeah, and we have to decide who we are and force the world to deal with us, not with the idea of what it wants us to be. We just have to decide, I'm going to love being an African American. We're just going to have to decide that and stand up instead of just always bellowing ourselves down for others to accept us in a way that's more comfortable for them. We have to decide if we're going to stand up and be who we are and love who we are. And I'm black, I love myself, and the world just have to deal with that. I think those are some of the things that I think are little to do, but I think they are so profound that we need to let it be known. And once we do that, I mean, that is so unstoppable.
I think we need to start looking within ourselves more, taking time to listen or just meditate with our internal thoughts and the God that is just within us.
So
we
agreed.
Understand right on the approaches that we need to take.
So what do you think? Okay, but here's the last question I'd like for Johneya to answer this. What should we do in these times to fight for freedom? What should we do with the youth? Because when we talk to the youth, when you're around the youth, what are they saying? Some of the things that we ought to do to fight for freedom in this time towards liberation? Because what have you heard them say?
Well, I don't really recall what they have said, but I think we just need to.
What?
We need to keep our minds cleared.
No,
we need to read more. We need to just
read more.
Stop being distracted with other things that are out there. Start allowing ourselves to be so distracted. We just need to stay focused. We need to stay working within within the movement. Involved with our mentors, people like Dr. McClain and
yourself.
Yeah. And, okay.
So, I heard Kwalik say this. Now, Kwalik is one of our mentors. I heard him say this, and he's just a 19-year-old black man. He said that too. Young African Americans and people, especially African Americans and people of color, have to lessen their time on social media. They look for social media for all the answers. And like Johneya says, the answers are within themselves. But if that has not been displayed to you as a young person, you're not going to know that. If it hasn't been taught to you, then we go back to teaching, being the first teachers in our homes, the mothers. We have to teach the information to the children. It's a constant thing over and over. She said, read more books about self-awareness. We have to understand our plight in this country and around the world. And like I like to tell a lot of young people, our people are oppressed all around the globe. It's just not here. So we're fighting for liberation in this country for a very long time. But we have to rediscover some things about ourselves. Talk about the discoveries, the accomplishments, the things that we have done since the beginning of our existence.
I think we need to read more books, but we basically what I'm trying to say is we need to be aware of where we put our energy.
Mhm.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Johneya.
welcome.
Dr. McClain is taking a brief interlude. I'm gonna tee it up for Rep. Harold Mitchell here in just a second, and I want to piggyback on something that you said, Dana and Johneya, as well as you, Nathaniel Smith. Until we develop an unconditional love for our fellow Black brothers and sisters and find value in one another, we are a lost people. We are a lost people. And I think that that is key. I'd like to encourage the audience to read a book that I recently had some great conversations with some wonderful young people who did some filming for the Partnership for Southern Equity. And this young man said, Dr. Joyce Degree Leary's book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, is a diagnosis. It's a diagnosis. There are subtle nuances in how we interact with one another that reinforce the trauma of the enslavement of our African ancestors. And to this day, we are still carrying out some of those same damaging traumas. It's why we are so easily distracted with social media. I want you to take a listen and think about this phenomenon. When Kamala Harris was running for VP, do you remember the strange wave of Black people that were against her? And then at the same time, Black folks were embracing raunchy hip hop artists, Cardi B, and that song WAP. And they decided that WAP was Black women's liberation, a whole song about our vaginas and the hypersexualization of women, Black and brown women. Well, at the same time, they poo-pooed the Black excellence of an accomplished Black and East Asian woman. She didn't go to Harvard. She didn't go to Yale. She went to Howard and HBCU. She pledged a Black Greek letter organization. And then she went to a small law school in Northern California and started her way up as an ADA, then a DA. She clawed her way up. And we had to convince our own people to that the hypersexualization of Black women is not the way. It's not the way. It's like they have turned our popular culture on its head, where we used to embrace getting an education, getting up and getting out the ghetto. They've turned the ghetto into fabulosity. Everybody wants to be, they have created a culture which is the thugnification of our Black men and the hypersexualization of our Black women. And that is rooted in slavery. That is rooted in chattel slavery. And our minds have been captured by that. And that is the distraction. So until we understand that, until we understand how we, the African-American diaspora and the African diaspora, are caught up in a whirlwind of psychological warfare. Listen, this may sound radical, but I say this everywhere I go. We are at war. We are at a war for the hearts and minds of our young people. We're at war for economic liberation. We're at war for criminal justice liberation. Listen, they have legalized marijuana in darn near 50% of the states, and Black men and women are still locked up, and we have not risen up yet about that. You can now get a marijuana franchise in some states, but our Black brothers and sisters' work record and employment record is irreparably damaged. We haven't risen up about that. We're just fighting for parity. In the financial industry, it will be parity, even ground, but we're fighting for equity at all levels. And equity is the new Black renaissance. Equity is the pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. They've been telling us to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps for so long. We didn't give us equity. We're just trying to get to the boots. We're just trying to get some boots, y'all. They don't even want us to have boots. They've enslaved us, flooded us with drugs, put the factories in our neighborhoods, poisoned our water, poisoned our air, poisoned our home loans. Now all of a sudden they want to flood us with black trauma on Netflix. They want to give us black businesses that we can order from Uber Eats. All of a sudden we're the end people. They know their time is up. It's been 400 years since the first recorded enslaved Africans hit these shores. We're not going to talk about the 65 years ahead of that, but it's been 400 years. Many Black people don't even know about the 2019 year of the return. Many Black people don't even know it's about $3 billion sitting out there on the continent of Africa waiting for us to do business with our brothers and sisters. I remember when I grew up in the 80s, and I'm going to close here in 1 minute because I want to hear from Rep Mitchell. I remember growing up in the 80s, they used to tell us that Africans don't even like us. And then I got older and got to college and met some African people. They said, who told y'all that? It's a hard conversation across many African states. What do we do about our lost brothers and sisters across the pond? They waiting on us, y'all. They waiting on us. They got a whole preference program. We learned that at the Harambee House retreat in 2019. We had a brother come in from Côte d'Ivoire. He said, listen, it's $3 billion out there waiting in the African Union. They said, if you want to come build something and it's someone that ain't of African descent that wants to build it, we picking the Black person. But they don't want us to know that. They got it. You're right. Young people, we are stuck, mesmerized by social media. We're getting our news from the enemy. So we must start to find value in one another, no matter what. And I'm going to leave us with this. A good brother we both know, Dr. Michael Porter, said, you want to know why the Jewish community is so tight-knit and they so together? He said, because at a certain age, all their kids go to Jewish school and they learn about their culture. They go to regular school, but then they go to Jewish school. We need to start thinking about that. We need to start taking our children through something like that, through African-American cultural schooling. The Greek people go to Greek school. The Jewish people go to Jewish school. It's time for our kids to go to Black school. And lastly, one last example, good brother over there at the Russell Center, Jay Bailey, had a meeting with him in 2019. And he said, you know, I got a Jewish friend and he lives in a certain side of town. He's worth about $10 million. And he said, oh, Jay, I'm getting ready to buy myself a new house. And it was 2 blocks away from where his current house was. He said, well, you're worth about $10 million. Well, you don't want to move out to Buckhead or Alpharetta or over here. He said, why would I leave my community? It's time for folks to come back to the hood. Stop leaving the neighborhoods. And then you want to come back to the neighborhood and march about and cry about gentrification. Meanwhile, you got white people and everybody else coming and getting deals, fixing up these houses, grandma and them's house that you didn't like no more because it's the hood and I want to go live with everybody else. Oh, let me go back to the hood and fight. We got to stop doing that, y'all. We've got to stop mimicking our enemies. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Representative Harold. You're on, brother.
Oh, I was looking at Dr. McClain. See, she was on mute.
Eyes on mute. Am I off mute now?
Yes, ma'am.
Whoa, sister girl. Oh, all the speakers have got me just so excited. I might run out and do something. Representative Harold Mitchell, take us home, lay down the tracks, give us some of your history, and bring us up to today, because there's some things going on at the White House level. I know you're on the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Yeah, you left me off, but that's all right. I know you up there representing. So bring it, brother. Let's hear it.
Okay. Well, Dr. McClain, I just want to thank you for creating this space, and especially, for these speakers. And Alicia, you laid it all out. I mean, it's exactly what we have to do. We need to do. we're on target. But it seems like the theme with this, and Dr. McClain, I'm just going to reel it back and kind of just sum what has been said. And when you look at it and you understand who you are and whose you are, nothing can stop you, first and foremost. I mean, there was a lot of, reflections going back to that one thing that we stand on, and that is the word of God, period. And when you begin to understand that, we talk about our ancestors and our pioneers that we lift up. That was this thing that, drove Sister Harriet. You couldn't stop her. You can't stop someone that really knows who they are and what path that they're on. And when you lose focus, that's when you see all the nonsense that Sister Alicia, you lifted up. I mean, this is why we see that. And that's why until we break, like you said, the self-hate and learn to love ourselves, which society has taught us from the beginning. But I think, the good thing in this is that we have to go back to the basics. And Dana, you laid that out real good. We got to go back to the basics. And if you look at it, this pandemic has forced us to push the reset button. It's like we got so big and up, and as you just stated, Alicia, I mean, some folks, they forgot. I mean, we really forgot. And I think mostly back to Samuel L. Jackson and Django, I see that role in so many people. And, we keep looking at white people, but I'm looking at the Samuel L's that they created that character from in all elements of society. And then we look at them and it's like you go back, all those slaves didn't have, 15 white men trying to usher 2,000 black men onto a boat to bring over. I mean, it was some black folks that, showed where to go and where to pull. And I mean, but all I got to say, ma'am, is that you were spot on, but we got to hit that reset button and not look at Dr. McClain, how we're waiting on someone else to deliver us. And that's not going to happen. The Calvary is not coming over the hill to save us, and we can do it ourselves. But too many times, I mean, we're totally confused, especially about how the system works and expecting someone else to deliver us. And that's not going to happen. And, Doc, when you were asking what motivated us, it was my 103-year-old grandmother that was really not looking for somebody else to chart a course for us. And when we organized, it wasn't me, myself, it was the people in the community that didn't have a high school education, as Dr. McClain stated. They were stakeholders who knew we had a lack of access to healthcare, who had been dumped on. I mean, the city, our local municipality, put their landfill in our backyard. And it's not me saying it, but they dumped the medical waste, such as amputated limbs and fetuses, in that landfill that was tested in 2000. The same thing that was tested in that landfill was tested in the people's wells that they drank out of. And so, all these impacts that you stated, environmental injustice is the path of least resistance. And it would continue until we take the stand and stop it. I mean, we cannot expect for folks that exploit us to look out for us. That's just not going to happen. The Constitution says we the people, not we the industry, not we all these other things, but it's the people. But we expect for them to look out for our best interests. And that's how we elected in our organization. We elected our vice chair to city council, because it's like, look, you're going to go and represent us, and you're going to identify those resources to bring back to us. And that's why, when Dr. McClain was talking about the, with the WEJAC, the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, one thing that I will say that President Biden did do was keep his word of putting frontline folks at the table there in the White House to make these recommendations of what has missed the communities in the past. When Barack created the American Recovery Act, that money didn't come down to being implemented in our communities. But now we see, and there's an opportunity, and Doc, what we were able to do, we created it's the Justice 40, where Biden has committed all of the, across the board, 40% into the vulnerable communities. And we know that it's not going to make it there because it's a big disconnect between the federal government, state, and local government. And until you connect that, because Biden can talk all day long about $1 trillion, but if the folks on the ground are not pulling that down, it's not going to get there. So what we did here in South Carolina, we passed it today, the Justice 40 Oversight Committee, which is going to basically look at those needs, whether it's broadband, like we saw, we're 2 years behind in education because our kids didn't have access to remote learning because there was no broadband. You know, people are dying because they didn't have access to healthcare. You know, those rural hospitals basically shut down. So that 40% investment, we're identifying it and we're making sure this time that we're going to get it pulled down and into our communities. You know, the 100-plus-year-old lead pipes that are in the ground, we're talking about Flint, Michigan, but there's a Flint in every state in the country. But in order to get that replaced, we need it drawn down. We also can plug the Department of Labor to train our folks to actually do this work. We don't have to look for other folks to come in and do all the things that we can do ourselves. And so Alicia and Dr. McClain, I just say with this whole piece, we're talking about Juneteenth, liberation. Hell, it's time to get up. And my word for you, ma'am, is persistence. I mean, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And now if we don't take advantage of what's laid there before us right now, hell, we can keep talking about the past and all the problems, but the money is on the table. And why in the hell is every other race able to take the resources and rebuild their communities, rebuild their structure, and we can't do it ourselves? So now is the time to get up, fess up, and put Samuel L. Jackson in his place, Uncle Django, and start representing our people and bring that capital into these communities. You know, that's the one thing that I can say. Folks see that plantation capitalism, especially in the Black Belt of the South, where they want control, this is the chance and opportunity for us to reverse that right now. And so, Dr. McClain, yes, you're there on the NEJAC. You're one of the pioneers, and you are keeping the WEJAC members, you know, accounted for. And if Biden doesn't do what he's supposed to do on these recommendations, we're going to have to go to Mr. Biden.
We gonna get him.
You know, kick that behind. But we got to stop putting people in place to represent us. I mean, and just keep expecting miracles to take place, because that's not happening. And I mean, you say stop looking at YouTube and Facebook and the social media. We've gotten that fairy tale in our head that somewhere over the rainbow, somebody's going to come and rescue us. And that ain't happening.
That's right. That's right.
Dr. McClain, Dr. McClain, may I add something quickly, if I may, if that's okay? So I'm really excited to hear what you said, Representative Mitchell. One of the things that I wanted to lift up for you to be aware of is an initiative that PSE is leading called the Justice 40 Accelerator, which is an effort with some other national organizations to actually make that connection and work to not just make sure that the money is on the ground to create an economy, but also is leveraged a way to heal the communities that have been historically disinvested in because of the racist history of our federal government. You can go and for the folks that are managing this, you can go to justice40accelerator.org. And what we're going to be doing is providing pre-development money to Black and businesses and other businesses of color in the South and other places around the country. We're also going to provide technical assistance as well. And right now we're having weekly informational sessions that anybody can dial into to learn about the Justice 40 Accelerator. This is work that, of course, we're doing for the community. We want to make sure that the people who will benefit the most from the Justice 40 order will have a chance to benefit from it. And we need support and leaders like you, Representative, to make sure that the community is aware of the accelerator. And so, again, you can go to justice40accelerator.org and learn more about it. We're not just going to talk about it. We're actually going to try to get money out into the community so these businesses can prepare to compete, as well as engage local government and the Biden administration to ensure that good things happen for our communities. The second thing that I wanted to add, which really goes back to my comments about the third Reconstruction. And as Black people and also other people of color who've been historically disenfranchised by the system of white supremacy and the society that we live in, we have to understand as a people that we won't be free until our planet is free. That our destiny as a people is connected to the destiny of our planet. You know, there's no difference between the extreme extraction of slaves that built this country and extreme extraction of our natural resources by people who had the same intentions when they enslaved us, and those same intentions are consistent with the way that they are hurting and exploiting and extracting resources from our planet. You know, we were the first environmentalists because we were the first people. So it's important for us to get back to that understanding that the people and our planet are one, and that in order for us to be free, truly free, in order for liberation to be free, that we also have to liberate our planet in the same way that we're working to liberate our communities.
Ashe. Oh, we got work to do. We got work to do. Drop that Ella Baker words of wisdom on us as we close out the show.
Friends, brothers, and sisters in struggle for human dignity and freedom, I am here to represent the struggle that has gone on for 300 or more years, a struggle to be recognized as citizens in a country in which we were born. I have had about 40 or 50 years of struggle, ever since a little boy on the streets of Norfolk called me a nigger. I struck him back, and then I had to learn that hitting back with my fist one individual was not enough. It takes organization. It takes dedication. It takes the willingness to stand by and do what has to be done when it has to be done. A nice gathering like today is not enough. You have to go back and reach out to your neighbors who don't speak to you. And you have to reach out to your friends who think they are making it good, and get them to understand that they, as well as you and I, cannot be free in America or anywhere else where there is capitalism and imperialism until we can get people to recognize that they themselves have to make the struggle and have to make the fight for freedom every day in the year, every year, until they win it. Thank you.
Every day until we win it. 10 seconds, marching orders. Brother Nathaniel, marching orders to the audience. What you want them to do? 10 seconds.
We must work. And when we're tired, we got to work. And when we're even more tired, we got to sit down and organize so other people can work. You know, the work of Dr. McClain should be honored. We should not depend on it. You know, we should be working to ensure that we're elevating and honoring our ancestors, but at the same time moving forward as a collective to work towards liberation. And the only way that we can do that is roll up our sleeves and, as brother said, not depend on anybody else to free us. We have to be the freedom, the agents of change that we've been waiting for. And if we wait on anybody else, it's not going to happen.
Ashe. It's called Kuji Chagalia, the second principle of the Nguzo Saba, self-determination. Self-determination. I want to thank my panelists today for just some great vibes, great energy, great information. Please join us next Wednesday as we once again engage in Greenversations, the road to freedom. Next stop, Liberation, celebrating Juneteenth. Now go out and free somebody, starting with yourself. We love you from Partnership for Southern Equity. It's about equity. It's about equity. You all take care. God bless. And I'll see you next week right here. Same station.
Take care, everybody. Bless you all.